And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the All American Book Club. I'm Eden Gordon Hill, and we are live here in our nation's capital, a shining city on a hill. And I tell you what, you guys have been so excited and so encouraging, but we have another summer feature for your books, for your beach bags, for your cabin trips, for all of your road trips. We have some amazing authors coming to us this summer. And this morning, I have the honor to introduce you to Irene Hannon. She is a best-selling and award-winning author of more than 65 contemporary romance and romantic suspense novels. 65, absolutely 65. And today, we are going to be talking with her. She is with Rebel Books, but we're going to be talking with her about two books that came out. Sandcastle Inn just came out earlier this year. And another one of my favorites is called Into the Fire. Could not put it down. Such an amazing read. So will you all please help me welcome Irene Hannon. Thank you so much for joining this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So I would love to hear about your inspiration. What led you first to becoming an author? I want to hear about your author background first, and then we can talk about all of your amazing books for our summer readers.
Well, that's a question that I get a lot when I do speeches or I make appearances. Like, when did you decide to become a writer?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that question because the truth is I didn't decide to become a writer. I was born a writer.
Oh, I love it.
Well, I really think that writing, like any other talent, is part of it is innate. You're born with it. There are wonderful artists out there, for example, and I could take art lessons until I was 100, and every person I draw would look like a stick figure because I am not an artist. It's a talent that you're born with. And so I think writing and the ability to put words together in a way that can touch people's hearts is a gift. It tells stories, especially. So I think that I was just born with that, and I've been writing for as long as I can remember. That doesn't mean that you're born fully formed, though. I don't mean to suggest that, because talent is raw. That's how you're given it. Think of an athlete and all of the training that they go through to take that innate talent that they have and develop it. So writing is the same way. So it takes a long time to become a good writer, but the basic desire and ability, I think, was there. And I always tell people that I like to say that I made my debut as a fiction writer when I was 10, and I was one of the honorees in a Complete the Story contest by a national children's magazine. So that was my debut as a fiction writer, although I had been writing as long as I could remember. But there was a long gap between that honor and my first published novel. So, but no, I've always been a writer. I have an urge to write. And I think it's like any creative person, there's this inner urge that can become almost an obsession at times to just do what you feel naturally motivated to do. And for me, that's to put words together and to play with words and do something with them that makes people feel something inside that touches their hearts.
Well, let me highlight the inner obsession. Your book, Into the Fire, was an inner obsession. I picked it up, and it's a 3-time RITA Award winner for those who are listening into the live stream. But I picked it up and then I put it down, and I was like, wait a second, I'm picking this back up again. Your publicist was so kind to send me a box of books that we are doing for our summer series here at All American Book. And I want to feature your book. I want to feature Into the Fire, but I also want to feature your newest read, Sandcastle Inn. But I have to go back. That obsession. I picked it up. I put it back down. I'm like, oh, I'm going back to this. Let me get through this. And going through it, and the reveal was such a shocker. So you really a lot of mystery, the murder piece, these series of things that unfolded. And I guess my question to you is, as we intrigue people in picking up Into the Fire for their summer reading and their summer beach bags, what kind of background did you have separate from writing that gave you this innate curiosity and mystery development Did you have to learn that over time, or was it just another natural ability that you were born with?
Well, that's a really interesting question because I do write in two genres. I write contemporary romance and women's
Mhm.
fiction, which would be Sandcastle Inn. And then I write romantic suspense, which is
Mhm.
Into the Fire. And they're very different. They both
Yeah.
have romance, but they're very different genres. And with suspense in particular, there is a heavy research component
Mhm.
involved with that because even though my stories are fiction, all of the agencies and professions and organizations and protocols that I write about, those are real.
Mhm.
So I have a journalism background and I have a stickler for accuracy. In those days, that was more important when I was in journalism.
Absolutely.
But I want to make sure that everything factual in my books is correct. So for every suspense book I write, I do a huge amount of research. When I typically finish, I might have 100 pages of single-spaced research notes and citations. And I only use a tiny fraction of that in the book. But in order to write credibly about these complex professions and protocols, I have to know the material. So it's not a natural thing that I just happen to know all this information. I go in and I do huge amounts of research. And through the years, I have developed an amazing cadre of professionals that I can consult when I have questions about a particular subject. I also do huge amounts of online research. So when I finish a book, I feel like it's pretty accurate. I hope it's accurate. And it's funny because not with this book, but there was one book where I featured a forensic pathologist, and that was the heroine of the book. She was a forensic in a rural county. And that was one case where I didn't have anybody in my back pocket to call. So I had to do kind of just a general internet search looking for a forensic pathologist that maybe would help me. And I found someone in Illinois, and he was amazing. He answered all my questions. It was a very complicated storyline in that suspense novel. He sent me a few too many pictures of autopsies, but, but he was wonderful. But I do that with every book. Every book I research heavily to make sure that I have gotten the information correct. In fact, the very first suspense novel I wrote was a dual continent setting, partly in Afghanistan and partly in this country. And one of the things I had to research was the layout of the
Yes.
American embassy in Kabul. And so I dug deeper and deeper and deeper online. Believe it or not, I actually found that. But my husband was concerned because he said, Irene, if anyone in Homeland Security or anyone is monitoring
Yes. Yeah.
internet usage, they're going to show up at our door.
Yeah. You're
Fortunately,
right.
that did not happen. But I get typically with a suspense novel, I get intrigued by an idea, and typically it's not anything I know anything about. So I
Yeah.
have to just start from scratch and do heavy, heavy research to get that part of it right.
So let me ask you this about Into the Fire. Is this the only one you're going to be writing for this, or do you have two more? Because I notice with the authors with Revel, there's always at least a series of
Yes,
three.
yes,
Can we
typically.
anticipate?
Yes, yes, absolutely. This story, the way I write my suspense novels is there's a general category. This one is called Undaunted Courage, and there will be 3 books. And the series features three foster siblings who grew up in the same family, all adopted
Yes.
by the same couple.
Yes. Yes.
And they each entered very interesting professions. And so each book can be read as a standalone. The story
Mhm.
begins and ends in that book, but you do meet the other characters, these other
Yes.
siblings. So the next book in the series is called Over the Edge, and that will feature the brother, and he's a police detective. So
Yes.
yes, there will be 2 more books in that series.
Is that going to be coming? Is this for next year or
That
later
will
in
be
this?
this October.
Oh, fabulous. So we'll
Yes.
have you back in October. Oh, that's wonderful. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Well, that's a really interesting story because, as I said, he's a police detective and he is assigned to investigate this very high profile murder. And his only witness is a woman. And she claims that she's being targeted and that somebody is trying to drive her crazy. So he has to find out whether there's any truth to that.
Right.
And if there is, he has to find out who's doing it before this person totally undermines her credibility and maybe her life. So that's the basic storyline for that one.
Oh,
And I do,
well,
and I do feature in my books a lot of psychological suspense.
Yes, I noticed that in this one.
I do a deep dive into the characters. So I tell people, if you're looking for suspense, I'm more, I would say, closer to like a Hitchcock than say a James Bond. I don't do action adventure. There's action in my books, but it's not those car chases in every scene. It's more a deep dive into the mind, because that can be a very scary place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to make an offer to you. The All-American Book Club here, we have an official endorsement seal. And so I want to give you that full endorsement seal for this book, Into the Fire.
Thank you.
I would love to have an ARC copy of the next one, and would perhaps love to give you an endorsement for that. I just love your writing.
Oh,
so I
thank
want to
you so
offer
much.
that.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you. I will let my publisher know.
Yes, please do. Also, let's talk about Sandcastle Inn. Obviously, this is a perfect beach read as well. And I look at the cover, a girl sitting on the beach with her beach hat on, looking at the beautiful water. And at first, I was wondering if this is going to be in like the Hamptons or Nantucket. But I then started reading, and we're talking about the Oregon coast. Am I correct?
Yes, we are. Yes.
Okay. So share with me this outline for this book, and kind of give our readers the romance piece, but also reading the back of it sounds like there's a lot of life changes happening.
Yes, absolutely. And that's true with all of my romances. That's why I classify them not just as romance, but sort of women's fiction, because there's a lot more going on than the romance in these books. So I should tell your listeners and watchers should know that this is part of my Hope Harbor series. And this is actually book number 10. So
wow.
Yes. And it's, again, the common element in this series is the little town. So every story is new, and every new main set of characters is new. So people can pick up a book at any stage of the series and jump right in. So in this book, we meet a woman whose life has essentially imploded. She was in the hospitality industry, and everything fell apart. So she has come to Hope Harbor, where her mother lives, and not necessarily by choice, because she and her mother are total opposite. She's in type A, buttoned up, planner, and her mother's like, go with the flow. Let's just, whatever happens is fine. So they've typically clashed. They love each other, but they have typically clashed. But she's totally distraught. So she just decides, I don't have anywhere else to go. I'm going and see my mother. She goes to Hope Harbor. And also in Hope Harbor is a woman who has purchased a rather rundown bed and breakfast. It was kind of bought on a whim, and she's in over her head. And so her brother comes up. He's a veterinarian. He comes up from San Francisco. He needs to take a leave anyway, because he's had some traumatic events in his life, and he just has to get away. So he says, I'll come up. I'll visit. His sister has to go help a friend in their old hometown. So he's sort of left with this inn, and he gets there and realizes she's in over her head with this. Stuck every penny into it. I've got to help her with this. How am I going to do this? I'm a veterinarian. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, the heroine is coming from a hospitality industry. So they connect and eventually start to figure out what to do about this place. And then there's a wonderful secondary story that some readers have told me they love just as much as that first story. And that's a young couple who they're down on their luck, and their lives intersect with the main couples. And I love how these books, and all of them do this, not just this story, but there are multiple storylines going on. But I love how all of the lives interweave, and the impact that people can have on each other, sometimes without even realizing it.
Oh, I love that. That's such a beautiful way to put it. One thing I want to highlight to our audience, yes, we live, around our nation's capital, but we do have Virginia and Maryland, and that small town, that going back to the small town. And, my audience knows that my husband and I reside here in North Carolina. I married a North Carolina boy. I'm a Yankee girl now in the Southern world. And, I talk to, and I see that, especially when I watch faith, hope films, that are really filled with that intricate part of truth, lifting people up.
Yes.
It's always in a small town.
Yes.
And that, I love how you're doing that in your books, because it really does draw in more of that community feel, more of
Yes.
really supporting one another. And,
Yes.
and I think that that's forgotten about at a lot of time, because we're running 10,000 directions trying to keep our head above water. And I
Yes.
think that connection is sometimes lost.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you're doing. You're bringing
Yes.
everybody back together.
Yes, this small town feel. I've had so many readers tell me that they wish Hope Harbor was real.
Yeah.
Because they would either visit or move there. And that's the feel you get when you read these books. I always tell readers, my goal, if a reader finishes any of my books with a smile on their face and hope on their heart, I have done my job, because I think that's so important to uplift, not only to entertain, but to uplift. And, I write in what's generally called the inspirational genre. And I think that that is such an important and very popular genre right now. And I think one of the reasons for that is that people are so tired of being bombarded by violence and vulgarity in the media. And they're looking for something that will encourage and uplift and inspire. And that's what I try to do with my books.
Well, you being a journalist, former journalist, you would understand that completely. And, me sitting here doing this radio show, but having been and still a communications strategist for high level officials, and knowing what the media can do and tends to do, we then have the powerful books that you bring to the table that are inspiring another generation, that are inspiring moms around the kitchen table, inspiring book clubs, inspiring families to lift the good, the true, and the beautiful in the public square. And that's what we need. We need that. We need that inspiration. We need that faith. We need that truth. So I'm so thankful for that. We have less than a minute left. This interview's gone way too fast. And I have to ask you one more question before we go. And as we are endorsing your books for the powerful All-American Book Summer Read List, what is one area that you still haven't sat down to write about yet, but you are dying to? What's on your bucket list for your next book that you are just like, okay, that's it right there, and now I just have to sit down and do it?
I wish I had a good answer for that. Because you know what? The truth is, when I'm focused on the current book, that's where my focus is, totally.
Yeah.
And when I finish it and I'm ready to move on to the next book, I am not one of those authors who has this huge list and who always, they tend to say, I will never be able to write all these books if I live 100 years. I wish that was me. But when I finish a book, I literally start from scratch with a clean slate, and I don't have any preconceived ideas. I just start, as I said, with nothing. So I can't answer that question, because there is nothing yet. I'm right now focused on the current book, but when that's done, then I open my mind up and just see what ideas come to me. So that's I wish I could tell you this is what I'm dying to write, and I know I'll do it, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Well, tell me and tell my audience, where can they support you, follow you, engage, buy your books, all of the above?
Well, my books are available wherever books are sold. They're in large print, they're in audio, they're in ebook, they're print books. So anywhere you buy your books, you can probably find my books. If you're interested in knowing more about me or all of the books that I've written, my website, irenehannon.com, is the perfect place to go. And on social media, I'm on a few sites, but the place where I hang out the most and interact with readers every day is Facebook. So I would say join me on Facebook, and I will have a conversation with you.
Oh, well, I'm so thankful to have you here, Irene Hannon, Into the Fire, and also Sandcastle Inn. I can't wait to have you back in October. I look forward to celebrating your new book. And I'm so excited for our audience to pick up your books for their summer read. So thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.